Any questions or comments? Well, I think the best thing to do is try to create your own venues. I mean, don't allow venues out there to dictate your agendas and things like that. I mean, things like alcohol, and you can't talk to people when they're drinking anyway. I mean, that's the problem with alcohol. And it's not good to be around it. It's just not a good, we believe it's the devil, it's jinn, alcohol. That's what they call it, jinn. I'll have a jinn on the rocks. I mean, man, if they really knew what they were saying, right? I'll have Iblis on the rocks. And the rocks are brimstone. So you just want to stay away from that kind of energy. Cheese tastes fine without wine. And have grape juice if you have to. Grape juice tastes a lot better than wine. I know, and you'd be surprised how much you can, I mean, if you really want to keep up on that type of popular culture so you can talk to people, you'd be surprised at how much just from reading. I've read articles about films that I can talk about without ever having seen the film. You don't have to go watch a film and waste 2 hours of your life for something. I saw a film once by Khorasani, who won the Cannes Film Festival. He's an Iranian. I think it was Khorasani. Can't remember. I was interested just why this film won the Cannes Film Festival. It was being made in Iran, where apparently they have all this artistic censorship. But at the end of the film, they have an interview with him. And the thing about the film is it almost put me to sleep. At the end of the film, he says, they ask him, what kind of film do you like? He said, I like films that put people to sleep. But then they can't stop thinking about them after that. He said, think about American films. You go watch it for 2 hours and you're at the edge of your seat and you walk out the theater and you can't remember anything. Like, what was it about? Because it's all spectacle. There's no thought. And then they asked him about censorship, and he said every artist is censored. It's just, where do you draw the lines of censorship? There's no artist that's free of censorship. He said Americans have censorship. I mean, there's things that they can't go beyond. Simple as that. He said in Iran, we're basically not allowed to deal with two things, sex and violence. And it forces us to create films that actually are intelligent. And he said when Hollywood was not allowed to use sex and violence, they actually made intelligent films. He said now the films are all stupid. And the reason is because it's all gratuitous spectacle. It's just stimulating people's lower energies. That's all it is. Because people respond to violence. It's very intense to watch violence. And so there's adrenaline, and adrenaline's a drug. It's a really powerful drug. People get addicted to it, adrenaline junkies. Romans used to go watch Christians eaten by the lions. We do the same thing when we go watch these Arnold Schwarzenegger films of people getting their heads blown off. It's sanitized. But it's the same gore. I mean, it's a human thing. And that we see the Romans as decadent and, well, why don't we see it about ourselves? That's all decadence. That's what it is. It's vulgarity. It's decadence. And the thing about it is thresholds get higher and higher. So you need more stimulation. You need more violence. You need more, the sexuality becomes more perverse. That's what happens. In something intelligent, I mean, film has immense potential because it's a very powerful medium, but it's a medium of spectacle. You never want to be in a theater when there's an earthquake or something. You just, how do you justify that with God? As watching a movie when you died or something. The reason Plato outlawed the poets in the Republic is because of the whole danger of entertainment, what entertainment does in a society. Images and the Prophet ﷺ, he had some entertainment, and that's something about Islam that a lot of modern Muslims aren't aware of. That there is room for art, there is room for poetry, there is room for certain types of music and things like that. And traditionally it always existed in the Muslim world, but it should be done in a certain way, and it shouldn't become something that takes people away from God. Yeah, I think we need to rethink a lot of things and just be more creative about how to speak to people out there. And I mean, ultimately, everybody is dealing with their mortality. They're dealing with some real essential issues. While Christianity and Judaism are true religions, and we believe in them as an obligation, we're obliged to believe in them, we view them now as models of like a car that's no longer taking you there. It doesn't work anymore. And so you can sit in it and feel like you're in a car, and it's a vehicle. but is it taking you where you want to go? And on the other hand, for most Muslims, Islam is stuck in the mud. Their Islam is stuck in the mud. It's not that the car doesn't work. It's like you've driven it into the mud by your own stupidity. I mean, I'll never forget, I was in Mauritania, and there was this man was driving, he was in a Jeep, and there was this big mud puddle, and then there was a dry thing on the side, and he was like bragging about what a great driver he was. And when we were coming up to it, we said like, no, go over there. And he said, no, I know what I'm doing. And we got stuck in this mud, and we'd paid this guy to drive us. And we couldn't get the car out. We had to walk in the middle of the desert for about 5 hours. But the point is, he drove it into the mud. It's a perfectly good car. The road was there, and he just took it into the mud to kind of, I did it my way or something like that. I don't know. But that's the thing about people's Islam, is they drive it into their mud, and then they're like, why isn't this getting me anywhere? Well, you left the road. You've gone off-road. I mean, it doesn't have 4-wheel drive. It's got 5-wheel drive. Right? Shahada, prayer, zakat, fasting, hajj. But you have to be on the sharia and on the road. They're absolutes. Yeah, that's where it becomes absolute. And you'll know them because you remember this world. If you were put in Jannah and you never had any knowledge of this place, but in Jannah you have memory of this place. You don't have painful memories, so you won't have sadness or grief, but you will remember. Well, you're aware of hell, and the people of hell are aware of paradise. So the opposites are known still. Paradise is pure good and hell is pure evil, whereas in here it's all mixed. Well, that's the point. Their blind, deaf, and dumbness is like this. They won't open their eyes, and they won't take their hands off their ears, and they won't speak. And in the next world, they admit that. That's what the Qur'an says in Surah Tabarak. فَاعْتَرَفُوا بِذَنْبِهِمْ. They'll finally admit that it was their fault. They took themselves. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, every soul wakes up ransomed, and either it sells its soul or destroys it. In other words, sells it to God or destroys it. So that's a human choice. And there's a verse, it says that people do the acts of good until they're one handspan away from paradise or arm's length. يَسْبِقُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ. And then the decree precedes them and they do some action of the fire and they go to the fire. That hadith, there's another riwayah where it says, فِيمَا يَبْدُو لِلنَّاسِ, to what it appears to people. And that point is that those people's hearts, that they were hypocrites. So, and the thing about hypocrites is that they will do things that expose themselves before they die. That's why CD8 Zarruq says, all the things that people do in this world that are bad in order to obtain things that they deem good, those things will be the cause of the thing that they were trying to free themselves from. So if somebody learns astrology to protect himself from a harmful death, he'll have a harmful death. If somebody learns alchemy to enrich himself, he'll be impoverished. It has the opposite. So the thing that you go to literally has the opposite effect on you. The year after? No, here, in this world.
Is the story of Harut Marut?
Yeah, that's one opinion. It's mentioned in some of the tafsirs. I mean, Harut and Marut are a problem. It's an ishkal, because they're angels, but they're teaching something that's harmful. And that, in a sense, is almost like a negative revelation, which is interesting. I mean, the idea that, that you could have a negative revelation, which brings in the whole idea of opposites and things like that again. But Allahu A'lam. The thing about the Prophet ﷺ, he was affected by magic, but he was given the Mu'awwidhatan, which are the last 2 surahs in the Qur'an, Qul A'udhu bi Rabbil Falaq and Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas, and he never left them after that. And what happened to him was he wasn't affected in his understanding, but he was physically affected. Sulaiman alayhi salam was not given magic, because there's a difference between magic. Magic is using means that are in the creation. There's 2 types of magic. One is called khifat al-yad or sha'wada, which is like the magic of David Copperfield, people like that. It's the ability to create illusions, optical illusions. And then the other type of magic is manipulation of things in creation through magic. Both of them are prohibited in Islam. what the prophets do. In other words, when Musa a.s. threw down the staff and it became a snake, it wasn't magic. I mean, one of the things, if you read 1001 Nights, which is certainly not anything to get aqidah from or anything like that, but there's all these kind of interesting where the genie does all this magic, and then the magic, when the genie no longer is working for the person, all the stuff disappears. So like the genie will make him a palace, but then when the genie now has a new master, the palace just disappears. So all the treasure goes back to rocks. That is a good analogy for what magic is, that it is insubstantial in reality, even though it appears to be real. Whereas what happens with the prophets is that it's real. It's something that actually comes into existence. So when Musa a.s. pulled his hand out and it was white, that was real. Without any min ghairi su, there was no harm. It wasn't vitiligo or leprosy. It was this light that came out. That was real. It wasn't magic. So the difference is that one is a manipulation and the other is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is directly, not through means. There's no means. See, magic is using means in creation. Whereas the miracle, there's no means. It's direct from God. And that's why the people that witness it see it for that. If you've ever seen a film of somebody shot in reality, I saw some films from Afghanistan during the jihad. I saw this Russian soldier. I'll never forget it because it was so different from what Hollywood does. It was very real. And that's the nature of the miracle in relation to the magic, is that it's real. And that difference between art and life, we can see that a film is not real. You come out of it, you can fall into the willful suspension of disbelief while you're watching the film. But when you come out, you're back in reality. It's not the same. It's real. And magic is like, in many ways, it's interesting because simya'u is a magic where you create images in the air. It's called simya'u. I don't think cinema is related to it. It's interesting that in many ways that film is very magical like that. It's a powerful magic. It's definitely sleight of hand because these frames that are done to create an optical illusion, because they're still frames creating the optical illusion of motion. So technically by Sharia, I think the traditional ulama would have seen it as magic, as a type of magic. All right? Jazakumullah khairan, inshallah.